Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Eden Zero Chapter 103. And oh boy, there is a shit ton of a lot to talk about with this chapter. Okay, so big thing about this chapter is that in the middle of this dogfight between Shiki and Ziggy and just Eden Zero, Eden's One, we see the return of Elsie Crimson, and I am all for this for multiple reasons. The first and most obvious is that they needed the backup. I mean, let's not mince words here. If she didn't show up, they'd be dead. They would honestly be dead. Like the Eden's one is just infinitely better in every way. Now, how she knew to show up is kind of interesting because it's either a scenario where she pretty much knew how to log on to onto the Eden Zero's location, and has been keeping like tabs on our heroes in some way, which given the latter I think is probably not all that far fetched. Which when you think about how when we first meet Elsie, she was already piloting the Eden Zero, so I wouldn't be surprised if she took some kind if she had some kind of a tracker on there, or some way in order to pretty much zoom to their location. So yeah, I think probably the Skull Fairy probably has some kind of way of like homing in on the Eden Zero's location. So there's that. Um, the other option though is when Ziggy had awoken, his revival himself, or the Eden's One had sent out some kind of a signal that only she at the time could detect. But I'm going more with the former than the latter right now, because just the fact that Elsie had former control of the Eden Zero does make me think that, yeah, she probably did something to it in order to keep tabs on on Shiki and the others. Um, but whatever the case of how she got there, there's more to it than mere coincidence for sure. Which, yeah, I'm thinking it is that she put like a tracker or a tracer on that thing. Um, the other thing about her appearance is that right now she is our greatest fountain of information right now in terms of what the hell is going on with Ziggy. Because the other interesting, because okay, like there's so like I said, there's so much to talk about. The other interesting thing about this chapter is that there were a lot of not so subtle moments throughout where you can clearly see that Shiki is still having a very real internal struggle with himself about fighting his grandfather. And looking ahead in the aftermath of this, now the Eden's One has retreated, and like Elsie and the Eden Zero crew have reunited. I get the feeling this will be one of those scenarios where until Shiki knows what exactly is going on, he won't be able to like go all out or make any decisive decisions, which will put it which being unable to do that will put his crew in harm's way. So whatever Elsie has to say about Ziggy, Shiki almost kind of needs this information to put his mind somewhat at ease, so he won't feel as burdened about fighting Ziggy in the future. And whatever comes from the discussion with Elsie, sh- what what Shiki what Shiki really has to do is that he needs to do some internal thinking, and he needs to decide what path he has to take from here in order to move forward. That's the biggest thing I think with Shiki's right now, is that like he definitely has the strength, I think, in order to oppose his grandfather. But right now he needs to have the strength of will in order to do it, and and whatever decision he makes, he has to be resolute in that decision. Otherwise, like, absolutely no doubts, no fears, no nothing. Otherwise, he is going to die at the hands of, he and his crew are going to die at the hands of his own grandfather. Like, whatever decision he needs to make, he needs to stand by it, stick to it, and don't falter, and don't fucking doubt yourself. He needs to stick. He needs just stick by whatever it is he decides to do. Um, and also, yeah, let's talk about the other big reveal with Elsie's return and her being a member of the Oración Seis Galactica, six demon generals. And oh my fucking god. Like, okay, on one hand, the reveal in itself should have actually really been obvious to me. Like the fact that pretty much honestly the fact that Elsie herself was so well known even for a pirate, that really should have been my that surely would have been my first guess, because like again, I'm sure the Sakura Cosmos and the whole galaxy of Eden Zero has many pirates. So the fact that the intergalactic intergalactic agency took specific interest in her, yeah, that really should have been my first clue in after that Elsie was one of the six demon generals. But at this, it's also one of those reveals where on one hand you can't help but say I'm glad she's on our side. Well, on the other hand, going, where the fuck were you when they were going up against your colleague Dragon Joe? Like, legitimately, like, if anything else, if anything else, I think Elsie's help in that whole thing would have really been a nice change. I mean, obviously, like the whole ordeal with Dragon Joe, it did serve in order to help in order to help in order to help Rebecca develop her powers and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, Elsie, where the hell were you? They could have really used your help in fighting Dragon Joe. I'm just saying. It's like, yeah, it's just one of those weird things. Um, but just moving away from that, the reveal in itself, as well as the reveal in the thing is with this, the reveal in itself, as well as the previous knowledge that she and Ziggy were acquaintances, makes me think that Ziggy has some history with the Six Demon Generals as a whole, and I'm going out on a little bit more of a limb here, and I don't entirely trust trust what I'm about to say, but the fact that Elsie was name dropped as the Dread Pirate who conquered the seven cosmic seas makes me think this change in Ziggy might also in some ways be tied to his supposedly failed search for Mother, because there is still going to, I think, because again, well, it's I'm not saying that whether or not Ziggy actually reached Mother or not. I do think there is more to his failed attempt than what we think, and I think it all pretty much lies in. I think whatever more context we get behind why Ziggy failed to find Mother, uh, I think I think it all lies within the Starshine's memories, and Elsie herself might even hold the key to restoring the Starshine's memories, or at least some of them. Like, I get the feeling that's again that's something I'm going way out on a limb here, but I don't know. There's something about this that makes me say that Elsie not only has a wealth of information to share, but that she holds a lot of the keys to the mysteries that have been set up in this series right now. Um, and it's funny, but only now do I realize that each of the Dark Stars do represent a sort of classification of someone who would typically serve under a king in medieval times. Like Clown is obviously the jester. Like I think his name is what was pretty much Brigantine. He's the knight. I'm not sure what a wizard, obviously is the wizard. I'm not sure what the fourth guy would be. I guess attendant. But yeah, each of them do have this weird thing of being like, yeah, they're all connected to this whole medieval theme. um, and speaking now, I guess speaking of Eden Zero, let's talk about the fight. Now, and actually, okay, now let's now moving away from that though, let's kind of take a moment and talk about Connor, because the interesting thing about Captain Connor in this chapter is that even though he is clearly allied with Ziggy, he still has some sense of honor. So even though right now he is very much an antagonist, I get the feeling Mashima left his sort of allegiances very vague, like just vague enough to where he's going to be that morally gray figure in all this, where he won't necessarily betray Ziggy, but he's gonna still try and find the means of which to hold on to his values, at least for the foreseeable future. Whether or not he becomes a full ally of the Eden Zero crew remains to be seen. I don't see that happening. I think Mashima is probably going to keep him a little more in the morally gray area of things right now, because he does seem to be like he said, he still seems to have like this whole allegiance thing towards Ziggy, and he does seem to believe in whatever Ziggy kind of believes in now. But yeah, it's like Ziggy, yeah, it's a nice little tease, but I'm like, I want more. But speaking of the Eden Zero, let's talk about the dogfight between the two ships, because considering Mashima went out of his way to show just how outclassed our heroes are in this chapter compared to this Eden's One and the Skull Fairy, I think it's safe to say now that the Eden Zero needs a major overhaul and upgrade. Like, at this point, it's an unavoidable fact that this needs to happen. On top, like, if they don't do this, then that ship is going to be destroyed next time. And that's on top of the other thing that the Force, like, we definitely get a very brief thing of Wizard's power in this chapter, and a brief display of Wizard's power in this episode. And if that's only the power of what one of the Dark Stars can do, the four shining stars, and honestly our heroes as a whole, really need to find some way to push past their limits to even have a chance of facing the Dark Stars on equal footing. Like even the shining stars especially, like I know they're machines and whatnot, but they need to push past their limits and find some way in order to tap into more power. Otherwise, they are just going to prove Shiki right, that they are outdated models and that they will die at the hands of the Dark Stars. So yeah, and whatever form it comes in, like, they need to power up. And and for as much as I do love Kagura as the new Valkyrie, the fact that Ziggy so readily like abandoned the Starshines in these past couple chapters really made me wish Valkyrie was here to see what her reaction to all this would be and what she would have done when faced with this situation. And like getting quickly back to how outclassed everyone has become, even with Elsie's arrival, like barring any fantastical surprises, like it's like something definitely needs to change for sure. Like obviously Elsie pretty much like saved them, but I'm kind of a little iffy on that in the sense where I kind of wanted to see what was behind that vaulted door, but I guess we didn't get to see that. So it's a nice way, but I was hoping that the Eden Zero crew would kind of like finally reveal what was behind that vaulted door. So yeah. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Crunchyroll. Dead Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.